phrase is mentioned the known parameters and the new possibly identified parameters linked to any possible improvement. Process qualification, we need that to verify that the process enables constant quality and to establish a control strategy at the receiving side. Identify and control sources of variability in material and processes. So this is what it obviously was part of course, of the sending unit, the originator. In the tech transfer, there's another opportunity with a new player, which is the receiving company, to continue to learn from these sources of variability to know better your process. So this is a ongoing learning curve, not only for the receiving unit, but also to the sending unit. So actually, it's like a team that whose objective is improvement. So very important to understand, we have sending unit, receiving unit. So talking about the gap, of course, in order to perform an adequate gap analysis, as any other gap, we need to gather the right information. We need to share the information to perform this gap, of course, between the sending unit and the receiving unit. What would be some examples that would include, of course, the production capacity, if it is a single batch manufacturing or a continuous production or campaigns. These are very basic pieces of information. The receiving unit also need to evaluate the technical expertise, the technology, the capabilities, especially when there's a transfer between a highly developed, a sophisticated process to another setting which might have some limitations in terms of technology. Of course, starting materials, APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, very important excipients, very important to understand the role that this has in the product. Sending unit would provide also, of course, documentation, as was mentioned. For example, the drug master file. This is important in terms of which is the API that is being used and transferred. Or, of course, the active substance master file, which we call this more into the biological world. What else does the sending unit provide? Of course, provides all the finished product information. For example, batch size. This asterisk next to batch size is because this batch size is mentioned in the new revision of the TRS, the WHO TRS, as Dr. Dong mentioned. Then, of course, the history of process and clinical development, scale-up activities, process optimization, important. The disposition of batches manufactured with reference to deviations and changes. And I would especially emphasize this last part. Any deviation and changes, very important to be transferred. This knowledge from the sending unit to the receiving unit. It's obvious that all those lessons learned need to be transferred to the receiving unit in order for the receiving unit to prevent them. Of course, all the batch record change history, that is very important. Of course, that means that the sending unit, of course, has a very well-established quality system and should have a detailed change history on the document, on the batch record document, to understand what went, what was considered to change, and if that would affect the new setting at the receiving site. Of course, all the validation information package, and when we say this, we talk about even qualification of equipment, utilities, and especially all the process validation. Very important, the annual product reviews, as this is a very key document in all GMPs, very important, and it's very useful. Why? Because it summarizes in one document a lot of information. So this is important, and it's critical to be transferred, not only the last annual product reviews, but maybe the last 2 or 3 years, if that is applicable, in order to understand what went wrong or what could be improved. Of course, stability information, especially regarding the trends and any situation that would have been encountered in terms of the product. Okay, regarding cleaning, this is important. It is important to understand that cleaning, it is a site specific. We want to name it like that. Equipment specific. That means that the receiving unit has to develop basically their own cleaning procedures. However, the sending unit information regarding the experience in the cleaning procedures of the process to be transferred is very important. So it is necessary to consider it. However, the cleaning procedure will finally be set very specific in terms of the receiving unit equipment, and of course any change in the process that could affect the residues included in the cleaning validation. The receiving unit defines the cleaning strategy based on the sending unit information, as we said, and of course the typical key information to develop the cleaning procedure, and of course the existing cleaning procedures that needs to be transferred and considered. The cleaning validation report, of course, it will be focused into the removal of cleaning agents, of course, recovery studies and limits of product residues, complying with the required and mandatory aspects that are part of the WHO TRS. This is coming also from the current WHO TRS, tech transfer. And as you can see, we have key tasks regarding cleaning and the documentation provided by the sending unit. Of course, cleaning validation, solubility information, therapeutic doses, category, toxicology, existing cleaning SOPs, validation reports, chemical and micro agents used, and I include there any type of detergents used, if used, and of course a recovery study. So this is exactly what's part. Of course, it's not an all-inclusive list. This is just the basic and the main aspects. And very important, the transfer documentation. This has to be planned because this is key, and this would be the product and site-specific cleaning SOPs at the receiving unit, and cleaning validation protocol and report from the sending unit. Okay, regarding equipment, very important. The sending unit would provide information on the layout, of course, of the premises, the construction and finishes, the HVAC services, and the water systems. This is very important. For example, in terms of HVAC services, if there's also the requirement of any biocontainment, as we were able to see in other sessions. So all these pieces of information are critical for the receiving unit. Any health and safety environmental issues also included. An exhaustive list of equipment applicable, of course, to the process, the existing qualification and validation documentation procedures to compare, to help to perform, as we mentioned, the gap analysis between the two sites. So then we perform the gap analysis to adapt maybe to adapt existing equipment or acquire new equipment, or we need to have a process change to enable the receiving unit to reproduce the process. So this step, this phase of the gap analysis is, as you can see, absolutely critical and needs to be planned ahead. Dr. Dong was mentioning the phase 2 planning. Based on my experience, I think the planning, not only for tech transfer, but many other topics, is a typical deficiency of the organization. So planning is very important in order to have enough time to develop this. Okay, so qualification and validation at the receiving side needs to be performed. So we need to start with the critical process parameters, and the attributes should be absolutely clearly defined. The receiving unit validation protocols will be developed and approved between the SCU and RU. That means that it is a team that has to have a very strong understanding and communication. So this is just a reminder what these two terms mean. The critical process parameter, whose variability has an impact on the attribute and therefore should be monitored or controlled to ensure process produces the desired quality. So these critical process parameters are the ones that would definitely affect the process. This means that you might have other process parameters which has a less impact that should also be identified, but they're not part of the critical process parameter. They're non-critical process parameter. Just wanted to clarify that. And of course, the critical attributes, which of course are closely related to specifications, is a physical, chemical, biological, or microbiological property or characteristic that should be within a limit, a range, or distribution to ensure the desired quality. So this is also coming from pharmaceutical development document Q8, ICH Q8, which I encourage you to read thoroughly. Development is a key stage. I usually say that the best quality in development, if you achieve a good in quality development, your deviations are going to come down drastically. So it's very important to understand the first phases, how to build up a good GMP compliance starts with development, goes on into the tech transfer, and of course into the commissioning and first validation batches. In terms of premises and equipment, of course, we need to understand the minimum and maximum capacity, materials of construction, operating parameters, as we mentioned, the critical attributes, and the intended use. Very useful to have, I would say, not only useful, but necessary to have all the process maps and flow charts of the manufacturing process to be transferred, including flows of personnel and material. The impact of new products on products currently manufactured with the same equipment. This is important. This means, and it's also related to cleaning validation. If the receiving unit is going to start producing a new product and launch a new process, the organization needs to assess the impact of that in order not to affect the other products or vice versa, the other products not affecting the product that is being transferred. So this is very important, and of course it's part of the overall change control. And of course, any need for modification of